The streetlights flickered to life, casting long, wavering shadows across Mrs. Henderson's sprawling front yard. 6-year-old Lily loved hide-and-seek, especially when the twilight painted the world in shades of indigo and violet. Her giggles, usually bright and effervescent, were muffled now by the thrill of the game. "Ready or not, here I come," called out 10-year-old Jake, his voice echoing a little too loudly in the growing dusk. He began counting slowly from 20, his back pressed against the gnarled oak tree that served as base. Lily, quick and agile for her age, had a genius for finding the perfect spot. Tonight, she'd chosen Mrs. Henderson's overgrown rose bushes. Their thorny embrace, while a little scratchy, provided an excellent, fragrant shield. She squeezed in, pulling her knees to her chest, the sweet scent of the blooms filling her small world. She could hear Jake's count, growing fainter. 17, 18, 19. A sudden rustle in the leaves nearby made her hold her breath. A squirrel, perhaps. Or maybe Jake was cheating, peeking. Lily giggled silently, pressing herself deeper into the thorny haven. Then a new sound. Not a squirrel, not Jake. It was a soft, rhythmic sniffing sound, very close, and a faint sweet smell, like stale candy and damp earth, wafted over the roses. Lily froze. Jake wouldn't make that sound. He never smelled like that. The sniffing stopped. A twig snapped not far from her ear. Lily squeezed her eyes shut, her heart thumping against her ribs like a trapped bird. She told herself it was just the wind, or maybe the neighborhood dog had wandered over. A shadow fell over her tiny hiding spot, blocking out the last sliver of twilight. Then, a low, guttural voice, soft as a sigh but colder than the night air, whispered directly into the rosebush. "Found you, little flower." It wasn't Jake. His voice was deeper, rougher, laced with an unsettling sweetness that made Lily's skin prickle with cold. Before she could even scream, a large gloved hand reached into the bush, expertly navigating the thorns, and clamped firmly over her mouth. Another arm, impossibly strong, wrapped around her tiny waist, pulling her effortlessly from her hiding place. She kicked and struggled, but the man was too quick, too strong. She only saw a flash of dark clothing, the glint of something silver on his wrist. Her vision blurred with sudden, overwhelming panic. A heavy cloth, smelling faintly of chemicals, was pressed over her nose and mouth. The world spun. The scent of roses faded, replaced by something acrid and sweet. Her struggles weakened. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was Jake's distant, cheerful shout. "Coming, ready or not." Jake searched for a long time. He checked the big oak, the garage, even Mrs. Henderson's porch swing. He called Lily's name, his voice growing more anxious with each unanswered shout. The other kids had gone home, bored with the darkness. "Lily, this isn't funny," he finally yelled, a tremor in his voice. He knew her favorite spot. He walked over to the rose bushes, pushing aside the thorny branches. She wasn't there. But something else was. Tucked deep within the fragrant tangle where her small body had been, lay a single crumpled piece of paper. It looked like it had been torn from a coloring book. Jake picked it up, his fingers trembling. It was a drawing. A child's drawing of a stick figure playing hide-and-seek. The hider was a small, smiling girl. The seeker was a much larger figure with jagged black teeth and long, spindly arms. Underneath the drawing, written in a neat adult hand, were 2 words: Game over. Jake let out a choked cry, dropping the drawing. He ran, screaming for his parents, screaming Lily's name, as the streetlights hummed and the rose bushes swayed gently in the wind. Years later, the case of the missing 6-year-old Lily Green remained unsolved. Her parents never moved from the house, forever hoping for a sign. Jake, now an adult, still woke in cold sweats, haunted by the memory of that drawing and the chilling words. But in a small, isolated cabin, deep in the woods, far from Mrs. Henderson's house, an old man sat in a rocking chair. On the wall opposite him, pinned among dozens of similar childish drawings, was a faded picture of a stick-figure girl hiding in a rose bush. And underneath, scrawled in a shaky, satisfied hand, were the words, Lily Green, a truly excellent hider. He chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. Such a good player, he whispered to the empty room. He picked up a new blank sheet of paper and a fresh set of crayons, humming softly to himself as he waited for the next game to begin.
The old oak tree stood sentinel in the sprawling backyard, its branches gnarled and dark against the setting sun. 8-year-old Thomas clutched his stuffed rabbit, Barnaby, tightly. He hated hide and seek, especially with them. 1, 2, 3... His father's voice, deep and resonant, boomed from the tree. Ready or not, here we come. His parents, Sarah and Mark, loved hide and seek. It was their family tradition, a nightly ritual that always ended with Thomas being found in the most unexpected ways. But lately, the game had changed. Their laughter, once playful, now held an edge that made Thomas's stomach churn. Their eyes, when they found him, seemed too bright, too hungry. Tonight, Thomas had found what he thought was the perfect spot, the small, unused woodshed at the very back of their property. It was dark, dusty, and smelled faintly of damp earth and old tools. He squeezed in behind a stack of rotting firewood, pulling a threadbare tarp over himself for extra concealment. Barnaby's button eyes stared into the gloom. He heard their footsteps, not the light, searching steps of parents, but heavy, deliberate treads. They weren't calling his name yet, just walking. "He's good tonight." His mother's voice drifted through the thin wood, closer than he expected. "Really thinking outside the box?" "Oh, he's always thinking," his father rumbled, a strange warmth in his tone. "He's got his mother's cleverness, doesn't he?" Thomas held his breath, pressing himself harder against the rough wood. He could feel the vibrations of their steps now, right outside the shed. The latch rattled. Not bad, Thomas. Not bad at all." The shed door creaked open, letting in a sliver of dying light. Thomas squeezed his eyes shut, trying to blend into the shadows. He could feel the cold air rush in. "Come out! Come out, wherever you are," his father called, but the words were a sing-song, devoid of joy. A hand reached in, not searching, but moving with chilling precision. It swept the tarp aside. Thomas gasped, his eyes flying open. His mother stood framed in the doorway, her face unreadable in the twilight. Behind her, his father loomed, a faint, unsettling smile playing on his lips. "Found you," Sarah whispered, her eyes wide and unnervingly still. There was no celebratory whoop, no playful tickle, just the quiet, unnerving pronouncement. His father stepped into the shed, blocking out the last of the light. He carried something in his hand, a small, rusty spade, the kind used for gardening. "Such a brave little hider," Mark said, his voice soft, almost affectionate. "But every game has to end, Thomas." Thomas whimpered, clutching Barnaby tightly. He tried to scramble backward, but the woodpile pressed him in. "Don't worry, sweet pea," his mother murmured, her voice losing its sweetness, becoming flat, almost clinical. "This is just the final round." The last thing Thomas saw was the glint of the rusty spade in his father's hand, raised against the encroaching darkness. He heard Barnaby hit the dirt with a soft thud, then nothing but a ringing silence. Weeks later, the neighborhood buzzed with concern. Thomas was visiting relatives. His parents maintained a calm, composed demeanor, always smiling, always reassuring. One crisp autumn morning, Sarah was tending to her rose garden, humming softly. Mark was in the garage, sharpening his gardening tools. The old oak tree stood tall and unmoving. In the backyard, a fresh patch of earth, meticulously tended and covered with vibrant new hydrangeas, marked the spot where the woodshed used to be. The shed had collapsed in a storm, his parents had told curious neighbors. Sarah knelt, admiring the hydrangeas. They were thriving, their colors unusually vivid, almost unnaturally so. She smiled, a deep, contented smile. "Such a good boy," she whispered to the flowers, her fingers gently brushing a particularly bright blue petal. "He always did love to play outside." Mark emerged from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked at the hydrangeas, then at his wife. "Ready for another game, dear?" he asked, his eyes gleaming. Sarah stood, her smile unwavering. "Always, Mark. The game never truly ends, does it?" She picked up a small, freshly dug garden trowel, and their hands joined. "And there are so many good hiding places left, aren't there?" she added, gazing towards the edges of the property, her gaze lingering on the next unsuspecting child in the neighborhood who might wander too close, perhaps looking for a lost ball. They walked hand in hand towards the street, their figures receding as the old oak tree's shadow stretched long across the yard. The hydrangeas, impossibly bright, shimmered faintly in the morning sun, drinking deeply from the earth below.